This is a temple at Baalbek. For hundreds, if not thousands of years now, mankind has marveled at the architecture that you see here, not only in its beauty and its simplicity yet refinement, but in the fact of its massiveness. This megalithic stonework you see here in this wall, just dwarfing this person here in the foreground, that is a technology we really can't see people even attempting to try to pull off today for any reason whatsoever, religious or in any other capacity. And some of these stones have been so finely cut and set, and you see things like this where there are some temples had extra work done on them. It's not finished. It's not near as good as what you see before it. You look at things like this in Turkey, and this wall that's right here behind this lady, and the size of this wall and this rock that was set here. Clearly, just the ones next to it over here would be far more advanced than we're willing to give the people of the time. And then you see a rock like this. I'm sure there's these cut-ins that are here, but these cut-ins really seem to show you some type of being able to lever and things along that nature. But levering something that's 1,000 tons just doesn't make sense to a common man. And some of these always have these beveled edges. If you look at this one that's right here, it shows you that it was a repurposed stone from before, and that it's not originally the one that's was supposed to have been in there, and it's been set in, and then there's all these little chunks that are set on top of it to make it the squared area that it is. And indeed, with all the perfection that they had all around this piece doesn't make sense. And you see this wavy pattern of water that's across this thing, and it shows you that it was used someplace before, and it has been recut and set in there from an earlier temple, perhaps. Now, there are thousands of temples all over, and you can see these marks of reworking, like in the India tomb here. But you find walls like this that people like this man just walks right past, and when you look at it, I don't know if you can see it in this video here, but right behind him is this squared off area right here with insets into it. It's some type of decorations you're not normally used to seeing, and their eye doesn't seem to catch. But look at the size of these rocks and these megalithic stones here that people are using during that time. And it's found all around the world. You find them from Inca to the Mayas to South America. They're up through Russia, all through Europe, and these incredible cuts that they've put in there that just don't make sense or logic. Some things like this that you can see where they've rounded this off, had to cut a secondary angle, and how tight these fit together. It really just doesn't make sense why one wouldn't continue this up and try to make this one solid. Why would you go through this trouble and the trouble of setting this one in and so on, and how much difficulty there is in it? And you can always see this beveled in. It's always beveled in right here where it goes into these lines, which would be increasingly hard to do also. And you pretty much have to have done it whenever you were looking at the stones external from the wall. It couldn't really be attached to the wall whenever you're doing this type of inset right here. And so you can see ancient sites like this is Delphi, and the famous site of Apollo, the Oracle of Delphi. And here's Pythia, and it's where the word python comes from, the snake that carries around the Omphalos, which here's the temple here and how beautiful it is. And Omphalos was like an egg, like you see here, that was meant to be the belly button of the world. And there's a few of these that different cultures have put out and said, that's the belly button of the world. In fact, there's this place called, don't let me mess it up, but Ahutipito Kura, and it's on Easter Island, and they say this is the belly button of the world. And most of these sites that are saying they're the belly button of the world aren't far off of the equator. So they show you that they have a knowledge of where maybe the equatorial plane is at, and then they think they're the center of the land, or it centers around them. All primordial people thought that everything was centered around them. The sun wasn't the center, but the earth was the center of everything. We're the center of everything. It must be geared on us. But even in Easter Island, there's at least 12 of these sites of these belly buttons that I've found, and I've done a video on those too. But what I really want to concentrate on is these megalithic blocks that are here, that are seen at this site, and how they're put together. It literally looks like somebody shattered glass, like you lay it down on the ground and put a wet paper towel or a wet towel over the top of it, and then crack it up. And then you keep it just like that, and then stand it up to a wall. And is this the way this was built? Because you can see this type of construction here that is mind-boggling, and then right behind it you just see stacked up rocks that look a lot more ancient, in your mind, than perhaps what we're willing to give this. And yet this is older than that, and this is being built upon by that. This is the newer, the more modern. And I can see where they've squared off stones, and perhaps they didn't care about the beauty of it. They were just trying to make some type of fortress. But it's seen around the world where at one time, during the Golden Age, they were building to this level of perfection. Later, they seem to just mock it and get about halfway built. And you can look at things like this wall down here and how flat this wall is. And when you look down it from the corner all the way down, it has very little wiggle in it whatsoever. And the planes of each one of these is flat. Today, you'd have to take something like a 10-foot wide by 10-foot tall belt sander and run it over this thing constantly, hooked up to a machine to pull this type of work off. I don't know if you can really tell it here, though, but this is all sitting on an older foundation. And the beginnings of that foundation are shitty rocks. Real shitty rocks that don't even have anything to do with this up here. And this was said to have been built around 500 BC or so. But you can see this rock is repurposed right here. And the wall is just immense going all across here. And you can see that there are things that are out of place here. There's these columns which look extremely new compared to this older construction that's here. And then you look at the little rocks that are right here and how old that construction is, and it doesn't make much sense. And you see the weathering that are on these pillars as composed to the weathering that's on these pillars, and they tell you this is newer and this is older, and that doesn't follow logic either. And sure, this is marble, and this is a type of granite or limestone, and maybe even concrete, but it's still, in its weathering and pattern, doesn't show you that the immense time that they're willing to try to give these sites. And here you can see one clear form of what I was talking about, where this is kind of jumbled together, but it's stacked up, and you would call that nice megalithic work. All of this is real megalithic work, and it looks fairly nice, even though it slopes downhill and seems to go like that. But look at this wall back here and how incredible that is. I mean, just a honeycomb pattern that's there, and the difference of the two. Now again, this is at Delphi, the site of Apollo. And one thing that people always look at, like we were just then, was all the pillars and things, but they don't look at the flooring. And the fact that what they've done here is make a foundation, regardless of the ground that's below it, that ends up being flat, level, tight, and made out of huge megalithic blocks that dwarf that wall over there. And these aren't usually made in that cracked up form, but they're generally squared off, almost like a tile flooring. And you can tell that there was one set of tile flooring here and another below it. Like up in here, you can see how there was a previous one. So this just harkens to there being something else to this story, and people are trying to pick it apart, but it looks like there were ancient sites, and then people came and built upon those because they were sacred and ancient sites, and it's all been kind of lost. But here's that same temple, and you look at the size of this amphitheater here, but also the flooring that's right here has that same cracked appearance and that monolithic flooring. And it looks like, you know, it could have been one solid piece at one time, but it all just cracked into bits and was left here as it is, and somebody polished it back off to flat. I mean, it really has that type of appearance and doesn't let one think that it could have been any other way than something along that line that brought us to this point. Now, here again is this wall, and if we keep letting plants grow in between, it's going to keep ruining the cracks worse and worse and worse. You can see some of these cracks are so tight that plants can't even grow in them. I mean, it's really not gonna, there's not enough dirt and dust and a piece of pollen land in there and a seedling to let it even happen. You can also see pieces are missing up here, you know, where they've been taken and they're apparently not there at the site. There are a few that are, there are a few that aren't, but there's that corner looking down that wall. And here's another example of this megalithic rock. So look at this weirdo right here, okay? But look what it's sitting on. It's sitting on all these little platelet flat rocks that look like a bunch of slate. And this indeed looks like kind of what's built and makes the Sumerian ziggurats and things, or these, and a lot of the Egyptian stuff is made out of things that look a lot like this too. And it's a filler type stuff, and you'd say, okay, filler, but then this filler is here on the bottom, and it wasn't filler to make it flat or a level spot, because it goes here and it just jumps up for no reason, and the ground back there doesn't jump up. There's no reason for you to make this jump up, but yet they've done it, and it really doesn't make sense to your mind again. And all this megalithic rock work on top that seems to be perhaps a little bit more fancy than what it was even built upon, right? So there's that flip of the version of the better on the bottom. Here's the better on the top and the bottom, and so there's three whole sets of stuff going on here. Like right here, you can see it in front. There's three whole sets going on here. There's crappy set on top of good, on top of we're going to do another layer. I don't know why they keep doing layers on all of these temples, where they build upon it rather than just rebuilding it as it is. They seem to build another layer up on top of it. And these ancient cities that you see, like in Ur and all the Sumerian cities where they've dug down now, and apparently the city was collapsed on itself, and then they built on top of that like it was the foundation. And it's happened 3 or 4 times. You can go to Italy and Rome and places, and they've really taken one whole story and gone down below. I mean, I saw this one place where a guy went down and it was supposed to be his wine cellar or his basement, and actually that used to be above ground. And they have made a whole nother level, and then the streets are now at that first level. You know, and so things are getting collapsed down into the earth as we make more and more of these places, and it seems to be an incredible oddity. Here's that flooring that I was talking about, and here's the beauty of the site that we're talking about, and you can see that flooring that's there. But again, the super oddity that's here is this type of megalithic art, rock art workmanship, if you will, where somebody's making incredible shapes just to fit together for no damn good reason at all. Like, share, and subscribe, guys. Enjoy.